Miami's improved defense has punched the offense in the mouth at times during training camp. But in Sunday's scrimmage, the offense punched back.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, there are some shenanigans going on with ESPN's FPI rankings, and the ACC, Miami included, is getting screwed over. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about what I refer to as risers in training camp so far for the Canes, players that seem to be doing better and getting more attention than I expected these players would before camp started. But Miami just had a scrimmage on Sunday. Mario Cristobal shared some insights after that scrimmage. And folks, the most important thing to take away from this, 2 straight Sundays now, Miami has had scrimmages. We're now less than 2 weeks away from the Notre Dame game. First scrimmage, a little over a week ago, the previous Sunday, it went to the defense. And I don't have any issue with that. But I love the fact that the offense was able to take their punches, get out of that corner, and counter punch, because this past Sunday, yesterday, the offense won that scrimmage. So just to recap, my friends, last year, throughout spring ball 2024, fall practice 2024, I thought there was too much imbalance in the favor of the offense. And that wasn't just because Cam Ward was so great and the offensive line was so and still is really, really good. It was also because, as we came to find out during the season, Miami's defense wasn't very good. We hear it all the time. Back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, Don Bailey Jr. was on with us a week ago. He was on the team in the 80s. He said it. Our guy, the truth teller, has said it time and time again. Back in the glory days for Miami, the defense used to make it so hard for the offense even to pick up a yard, let alone a point in practice, right? But this year, there's been more balance. They've been going back and forth. It seems like the defense has probably won a slight majority of the battles out there. That was the case with the scrimmage 8 days ago. But the scrimmage yesterday, the offense bounced back in a big way. Mario Cristobal said this in a post-scrimmage interview with DBJ on the Hurricanes YouTube channel. The offense got in gear early, he said. They did it both on the ground and hit some big plays in the passing game. And folks, side note on that, as we've been seeing, the times I've been able to get out there, practices have been closed to the media for the past week or so. So since then, we've been hearing about it. Carson Beck is exceeding expectations in the building so far. He's been very sharp physically. We know he's fully recovered from the elbow injury. He's really impressed us with the way he processes and with the way he goes through his progressions. The football IQ seems a little bit higher than the Georgia folks were preparing us for when he transferred out of there. So physically, everything's been great. And he's also, I think Beck is taking this year incredibly seriously. Not to say he didn't the past couple of years in Georgia, but I think with his stock going down a bit last year, being at a new school, having new motivation, wanting to get himself back into the first round of the NFL draft, and also, wanting to, win a championship. It wouldn't be his first championship, but it would be his first as a starter if he can get it here in Miami. Beck seems really motivated, and it's showing on the field. He's been exceeding expectations so far. So it's comforting, but not surprising to hear Mario Cristobal say that the offense hit some big plays in the passing game in the scrimmage. Cristobal said, quote, "Last week, we felt the defense had the upper hand. This week, we felt the offense had the upper hand. We had a lot of substitutions, put a lot of guys in really prominent roles today to see if they can handle it. We'll check out the film to see who did well and who didn't." So that's another good bit there from Cristobal, that it wasn't just, the quote-unquote perennial starters, right? The starting offensive line, starting tight end. We're not even sure who the starting receivers are going to be at this point, which I think is a good problem. But Cristobal talked about rotating, 2, potentially 3 deep at multiple spots and getting really solid, consistent production from the offense. That goes to show you, as we've been saying for weeks, if not months now, the team is deeper than it's been in previous years. And yeah, he did still leave it open. They've got to go through some deep dives on the film to really get all the intricacies of the different players who got into the game to see how consistent these guys all were. But Cristobal has been basically saying it for the past several weeks. This is the deepest team he's had at Miami so far. He did comment as well, Coach did, on the defense. He said, we were really physical and fit the run well last week, and we have all week. Today, he said, it showed up at times, and then we plugged in a bunch of different guys. At times they did, and at times they didn't. So, all right, on the flip side, he talked about the offense really running on all cylinders when they were rotating different guys in. Maybe that wasn't as much the case on the defense, but I'm not going to be overly alarmed by it because the defense has been good for the total body of training camp so far. But maybe they didn't show as much depth and consistency in the scrimmage on Sunday than the offense did. And on the run fits, that's something that has been a bit of encouragement throughout camp so far. And we know Miami has good running backs and a really good offensive line. They have looked better going up against the run than they did in previous years. And you're going to get the ultimate test week 1. Jeremiah Love and company, Notre Dame has one of the best running back situations, maybe the best in the entire country. So these guys will get tested, and they have to be as consistent as possible in the, 9, 10, 11 practices you have left before Notre Dame. We're 13 days away. It's going to be here so fast, August 31st. Cristobal continued. He said, on offense, at times, guys stepped up and blocked the way they're supposed to block. On other times, like a 4th and 1 stop on defense, it was an unbelievable play on defense and unacceptable on offense. So him basically, and we know Cristobal is an offensive lineman at heart, right? So there was a play. I didn't see the play, of course, specifically in the scrimmage, but where the defense made a tremendous 4th and 1 stop. And apparently the offense didn't execute well. That's the double-edged sword, right? When your defense does something really good in practice, that means the offense didn't execute perfectly. So that's where we are on that. Cristobal also talked about special teams in the scrimmage. He said they worked on every single phase of special teams. 1s, 2s, and most of the 3s got to work on punt return, kickoff return. He says all of our kicking units got work. All of our place kickers got work. Our return units got work. Now, okay, we talked about the very good. Here's the not so good. This was reported by David Lake at InsideTheU.com after the scrimmage that he's hearing the kickers have not been very consistent. All right, that obviously includes Bert Auburn, who transferred in from Texas. He's got very good career percentages, but as we all know, if you watch Texas late in the year, he ended the season on the yips, missed a couple of important kicks. He's trying to work that through now at Miami. Carter Davis, FAU transfer, is the other one. Miami also used to have a kicker named Abram Murray who came in the class of 2024. He has since transferred out. So Bert Auburn and Carter Davis are the primary kickers, and we're hearing about inconsistencies. I don't blame either kicker for this. I don't blame Mario Cristobal for this. I blame the Borregales parents for stopping after 2 sons. We needed more Borregales brothers here. What do you do? And obviously I kid about that. And I retweeted this earlier today. Mrs. Borregales has a great sense of humor. She commented on somebody's ex post today, like, hey, I'm also sorry I don't have any more sons, but I do have 2 sons that are working hard in the NFL right now. Jose Borregales and Andy Borregales. So unfortunately, they don't have any more children. Can we find some cousins, nephews out there somewhere? But I just hope Miami can find that consistency, because place kicking, we've had the luxury of taking that for granted for the better part of the past 5 years, because we got 1 Groza year from Jose and then 4 almost Groza worthy. He probably should have won the Groza a couple times, was robbed. 4 amazing years from Andy. So 5 tremendous Borregales years. And I just hope that whatever we get this year is closer to a Borregales year than a Bubba Baxa year. If you know, you know. We don't want to go back to that. So I just hope Miami can find some consistency in that kicking game. As far as the return game goes, I think the Hurricanes potentially can have their best return kick and punt return units that we've had in years. That obviously Keelan Marion, who's been an all-pro as a return, or not all-pro, all-American as a returner, is here now, primarily for kickoffs. For punt returns, Miami has options like Keontae Scott, who's done that before at the SEC level. Malachi Toney, I would imagine, can be a really explosive return man. Ray Joseph is someone who's done that before, who's got speed and shiftiness. So Miami is going to have, I think, more options and a real blessing of options. Nye Carr could be another one. He's told me before that he likes the idea of getting more opportunities on special teams. So I think the Hurricanes are set up to be more dynamic from a kick and punt return point of view. Maybe a little less dynamic in the place kicking, but I hope we're wrong about that, and the kickers find that consistency that we are all looking for. So on that note, let's get to on the other side. I think this is a really important conversation to have as we're getting closer to figuring out what that too deep is going to look like. Players that are exceeding expectations so far. I'll call them the risers, guys that I didn't necessarily think would be doing this well as we're, a couple weeks away from the first game. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. Drip Drop is doctor developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. My go-to flavor is the cherry limeade, and that's what I love about Drip Drop. Not only does it work, it also tastes really good, so you're not like sacrificing taste for hydration. No, you're getting the best of both worlds. I've tried a lot of electrolyte powders, but nothing tastes as good or works as fast as Drip Drop. Folks, right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use our promo code Locked On College. That's dripdrop.com, promo code Locked On College for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Thank you for making this Monday Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you around the conference, talking all of your preseason storylines, big game previews. I imagine on our next Locked On ACC, this ESPN FPI nonsense is going to be a big topic on that. Is Rhett Lashley, should he be the new commissioner of the ACC? More on that on this episode and on the next episode of Locked On ACC as well. All right, folks, I've been thinking a lot about players that have, stood out to my eyes and ears, what we've been seeing and hearing so far out of Hurricanes training camp. And, you, as always, you're more than welcome to let me know who I forgot about or who I'm not giving enough respect to in the comments below. But players that I think sound like they're exceeding expectations so far. So, we're not going to talk about the obvious choices, guys who are practicing so well. Carson Beck, we've been very pleased. And you know what? Maybe he does belong on this list because he is exceeding my already high expectations at the quarterback position. But, I don't have to take a deep dive for this particular topic on the likes of Ruben Bain, Hakeem Mesidor, Mark Fletcher, right? Player, CC Maui Noah, guys you already knew were really stepping up. But starting with the tight end position, the guys behind Elijah Lofton, because we know Lofton, this is the year that we think he's going to blow up, right? It's 9 receptions, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, but wasn't used a whole lot last year. But what really excites me is the potential for depth. And Miami needs it because they didn't only lose Elijah Arroyo last year. They lost Cam McCormick, who, 9 years, finally ran out of eligibility. They lost Riley Williams to a transfer to Oregon State. So you lost, 3 of your top 4 tight ends from last year. But it's not just Lofton who's practicing well. Alex Bowman, I think, is someone who's showing he's really ready to make the Power 5 jump, has done well at Tulane for the past couple of years. But Bowman has been a really solid blocker and probably an even better receiver than expected. I think he's really going to come in handy this year, especially in short yardage and red zone. And, there's a storyline with Bowman too, because his brother, a brother of his, plays tight end for Notre Dame. Not going to be, I don't think it's high on Notre Dame's depth chart as Alex is going to be on ours, but we are going to have a brother versus brother storyline, tight end on either side for that opening game. We'll see how much, I think Nick, if I'm getting the first name correctly for the brother, we'll see how much the brother gets on the field, but I do expect Miami's Bowman to be on the field considerably. And, another one who I've been hearing a lot of good stuff about the last couple weeks at tight end is Luka Gilbert, part of that true freshman class of 2025. That he's someone who's been turning heads lately. And, on a side note, I know our pal D Money from Canes Insight has been talking about this. Miami's class of 2025, the true freshman, this is actually, out of the 3 full recruiting cycles that Mario Cristobal has had, 2025 was like the lowest ranked of those classes, but they might actually be the ones that have the most immediate of an impact, right? With Gilbert and also Brock Schott, a fellow tight end who could be a big part of that. And that leads us to the wide receivers. Guys who I thought would be pretty good here, and I think will be pretty good here, but have really been standing out even more than expected in practice. Joshua Moore and Malachi Toney. Like, we're going to have to think long and hard. When I give you my 2 deep depth chart later on this week, because that's a homework assignment I've given myself, we're going to have to think long and hard for both of those guys, whether we put them as number 1s or number 2s, because they are very much in that conversation, right? Malachi Toney at times has looked like the best receiver on the field, period. And Joshua Moore, with his 6'4", 215-pound frame, has got deceptively good speed with his long strides and has really shown he's adept to making contested catches. And he's been a reliable target for the various quarterbacks that are throwing him the football. So another really couple of pieces of evidence. And also Dalen Upshaw has been doing really well, another true freshman receiver. So those are guys who are exceeding it at the receiver position. I think someone who I had pretty high expectations for, but is probably doing even better than I had advertised, is Jordan Lyle at running back. And, I honestly don't care who starts, because that group is going to rotate, particularly the top 3 guys. I am always bullish on Mark Fletcher. I'm getting more and more bullish by the day on Jordan Lyle, who's also gotten himself a little bigger. He's over 200 pounds now. And Shamar Brown is having a really good camp, but I think Jordan Lyle is exceeding my already very high expectations. On the defensive line, there's a handful of them. And again, this is needed. And I'm sure somebody or some buddies from this group were the ones who made that play on 4th and 1 against the offense in the most recent scrimmage. Justin Scott is rising, which is necessary. Former 5-star recruit who's going to get his opportunity possibly to start this year. He could be your anchor at defensive tackle. We've brought up this name a lot over the last couple weeks. Armando Blunt has been consistently, we hear and we feel, crushing it throughout training camp so far at defensive end. Dante Simpson, another 2025 true freshman who has been working really, really hard to put himself in prominent positions to get on the field this season at defensive tackle. Another first-year guy who's a friend of the show now, Hayden Lowe, with his, 6 foot, I think he's like 6'4", 255 as true freshman. He's doing some good work at defensive end. And Marquise Lightfoot, heading into his second year, I think is practicing more consistently well. So a bunch of guys on the defensive line who are exceeding expectations. At linebacker, the guy that probably we get the most kind of buzz for is Cameron Bobby Pruitt, apparently having a really good camp. And I think Pruitt, like his his range, his speed, his explosiveness is really going to do us good stuff. And not to say he's the only linebacker that's doing well. By the way, we're going to have an interview later this week with Popo Aguirre. So I'm curious to know more about his journey this season as he's going to step up, I think, into a lot more prominent playing time this year. Wesley Basaint is having a really good camp. Mohamed Touré, the transfer from Rutgers, I think could end up being one of the best players on Miami's defense this year. But in terms of like who's rising, the guy that I'm going to spotlight is Bobby Pruitt there. And in the defensive backfield, it's hard to narrow it down even to just a couple, because I think the DB room, pound for pound, is going to be the most improved part of Miami's team this year. Not only with OJ Frederique heading into his second year, he's practicing really well. Xavier Lucas transferring in. I already had high expectations for both of them. I think a couple of guys that are probably exceeding my expectations from before camp. Ethan O'Connor, like, apparently he's really been stepping up, and we heard about him as someone who particularly stood out in the scrimmage from a week ago, that he had like a really, really good performance out there. And someone who's exceeding my expectations coming off of injury, Damari Brown. He's having a really good camp, and I think he's going to make, and who cares about my depth chart that I'm doing later this week? I'm not the one that matters. The depth chart that matters is Mario Cristobal's. And I think guys like Damari Brown and Ethan O'Connor are going to give coach a lot to think about when he's coming up with who's going to play when and how those rotations are going to go. Because Damari Brown is someone that you cannot forget about this dude. I know he missed like 95% of the season last year with injury. He's back, he's physical, and he's motivated. And oh, by the way, for that Notre Dame game coming up on Sunday, August 31st, the Hurricanes announced yesterday they're doing an orange out. That means if you're going to the game, you're going to be at Hard Rock Stadium August 31st. Do not forget to wear orange. I don't care if you're wearing an orange jersey, which would probably be my choice, orange polo, orange t-shirt. You just paint your body orange if you want to do it that way. It's going to be hot out there, so maybe you go shirtless, paint your body orange. Just don't be that guy who shows up wearing green or white or any other color and screws up the orange out, right? We want it to look great on TV, and I know the building's going to be loud. So I know it's going to be sold out. I know everyone there is going to be rowdy, and there's going to be some alcohol maybe flowing through that stadium. I remember how loud it was against Notre Dame back in 2017 when we kicked their butts. So be loud, be rowdy, but wear orange, because that's what they want. They want an orange out, we give it to them. So do not be that guy who shows up in green or white or black or something to the game. Make sure you wear orange. All right, coming up next. This is strange. How is it that the ESPN FPI ratings changed drastically between June and August with no new games played and no new data that I can actually comprehend? Why are Miami and Clemson dropping like flies? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And folks, if you're looking for tickets to that game on August 31st, that little old game, you're going to find them on Game Time. Game Time is never going to be sold out. You're going to get the best prices, the best features, and the prices are actually going to go down the closer you get to kickoff. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. And hey, with the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes that possible, because Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So how about that? If you've never used Game Time before, you're getting Miami Notre Dame tickets. Not only are you going to find the best prices, you're also going to get an extra $20 off on us on the Game Time app. Create your account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. Make sure you check out The Portal. It's a podcast hosted by our very good friend, the recruiting overlord. I think we're going to put out the Brian Smith signal this week to get him on because there's some recruiting stuff I'd like to talk to him about. But on the Portal pod, which is part of the Locked On family, he talks everything: recruiting, transfer portal, NIL. Brian breaks it down like no other. It's available free on YouTube and available free wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so I'm not going to say this surprised me because it just feeds into that whole SEC narrative. So this was an update that just took place, as noted by CFB Kings on X. ESPN released their initial FPI ratings back in June, but updated it today. Real quick, here's what ESPN's FPI is: Football Power Index. It's defined as a predictive analytics system that measures team strength and forecasts game and season outcomes in American football. It's not a traditional ranking, but rather a measure of how many points above or below an average team is expected to perform on a neutral field against an average opponent. FPI uses various factors to generate its predictions, including offensive, defensive, and special teams components, as well as considering factors like home field advantage and quarterback injuries. So really, they put out their initial rankings in June. Not a whole lot has changed. I mean, I guess training camp headlines around the country for what that's worth. But with the update, Miami dropped from number 9 to number 17 in ESPN's FPI, and Clemson dropped from number 11 to number 16. They write, with little to no change for either team over the last 2 months, ESPN's system slashed the metrics of the ACC's top 2 contenders a week before the season starts. According to the FPI, Miami's percent chance to reach the college football playoff dropped from 46.3% to 35.9%. That's an over 10% drop. Clemson's chance to reach the CFP dropped from 47.3 to 38.2, a drop of 9.1%. The Hurricanes and Tigers dropped behind. Tell me if you hear a theme here, folks. Hurricanes and Tigers dropped behind Tennessee, who moved up 2 spots. Ole Miss moved up 3 spots. South Carolina moved up 4 spots. LSU, Florida, who moved up 5 spots. USC moved up 5, and Michigan. So your last 2 are Big Ten, but that's a lot of SEC in there. And someone pointed out to me, 9 of the top 13 in ESPN's FPI are SEC. Texas at number 1, UGA, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Oregon, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, SEC, LSU, Florida, who moves in front of Miami, USC, Michigan, Clemson, and then Miami. So what this does, folks, and again, like the ESPN FPI, that's not the little number you see next to your team's name on game day. That's the AP poll to start the season, and then the college football playoff poll later in the season. But the ESPN FPI does influence the way media members and committee members vote. It influences the narrative. And of course, ESPN is one of the most powerful players when it comes to shaping opinions about college sports. The ESPN is the primary rights holder for both the SEC and the ACC, but it's very obvious a lot more of their money is made on the SEC, and a lot more of the influence they get comes from the SEC. So, folks, when I see manipulations like this, when again, there's not really any new data between June and August, and yet they move up all of these SEC teams, they move the ACC down. What this does is it perpetuates that narrative of anytime an SEC team loses a game to a conference rival, when all of their conference rivals are ranked higher, that makes their losses look better, and it obviously also makes their wins look better when that SEC bubble is so inflated. So that's the issue we have with this. And you'll notice, for those who are looking at the X post on the screen here, the very last line in the CFB Kings post is, anyone want to offer a guess as to why they moved all these SEC teams up? And a comment from SMU head coach, former Miami offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley, he sticks up for the ACC. It's funny, Rhett Lashley is a bigger cheerleader for the ACC than the ACC commissioner. Jim Phillips needs to take notes from the coach of SMU. Rhett Lashley does more to defend this conference than the commissioner's office does. Rhett says because the whole thing is rigged. That's it. And I know before I pop a blood vessel over this, I know what you're going to say. Don't get so worked up about narratives. Some of you, in fact, will say, hey, I like it better when Miami gets underestimated, counted out, because we don't want to be cocky. We like the us against the world. We like the chip on our shoulder. This is going to make us perform better. Maybe you're right. And I also get if Miami wins all their games, these problems will take care of themselves. You will not deny. I mean, you can't deny Miami if they go 13-0 with an ACC championship. They're going to get into that college football playoff. But I just want everyone to be aware. I want you to be aware of the type of manipulation that goes on in favor of the SEC. That again, you prop up every team in that conference. Anytime the SEC loses a game, it's a quality loss. You win a game, it's an elite win. As Rhett Lashley says, the whole thing is rigged. So let's be aware of that. All right, thank you all so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. I know we're going to have a lot to talk about throughout the rest of the week here on Locked On. So make sure you smash that like button, subscribe. As we get closer to August 31st, we are going to, at some point within the next 13 days, we're going to have a big crossover episode with Tyler Wojak from Locked On Fighting Irish. We'll see if he really knows what's going on with this quarterback competition. You know my theory, and Notre Dame has now closed all of their practices down. So, their media doesn't get to watch anymore. Miami's practices are closed down. They might already know whether it's Minchie or Carr starting at quarterback, but I think Marcus Freeman wants to let that marinate. Let Miami keep preparing for two very different quarterbacks, and you don't know which one you're going to face. And honestly, it also wouldn't shock me if they both get on the field. If it really is as close of a competition as they claim, and they are as different as we think they are, with Minchie being more of a dual threat, great legs, Carr, arm, traditional pocket passer, maybe they both see the field situationally. But in the meantime, Coach Freeman is giving Miami a lot more to think about. So make sure you hit that thumbs up button, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.